Planet Mission Part 1 by David Claiborne, as read by the author. New chapters every Monday. The full novel is available on Amazon.com and other online retailers. Links in the description. Chapter 2 The Daily Briefing. The Arca's loudspeakers clicked and popped, though Bo barely registered the noise in his early morning sleep, having long become accustomed to the ship's various noises at this point in the journey. Then the sound of a gong and bass drum clashing caused him to sit straight up, now very awake. The captain's wake-up call for that morning, a selection from a composer whom Bo assumed was long dead, featured percussion and a strong brass section. Bo reached for his phone and watched as an app identified the song. Fanfare for the common man, it told him. Bo heard Director Waters emerge from his quarters outside. Waters passed hastily through the hall and ascended the deck for his ritual morning discussion with the captain about his wake-up calls. The captain's fun did not matter to Bo. He had become accustomed to waking up to music. In fact, he had been having an uncomfortable dream and was grateful for being awakened. Though he did not particularly want to remember the dream, he could not help but try. Space, vast, unchanging, and empty, seen through the transparent metal of the portal in his quarters, was good for contemplation. He let his mind wander until the music entered his thoughts again. Bo arose, changed his shirt, put on his uniform, and made his way to the observation lounge. He smiled as Waters climbed down the ladder from the cockpit. The captain had ejected him yet again. Stern rejoinders followed Waters as he descended the ladder. Bo moved to the wall and tapped the observation glass. It turned opaque with his touch. He scrolled down the touchscreen, looking for the daily briefing. "Thank you, Bo, I've got it," Waters said, who pressed his thumb to the screen, biometrically authorizing use of the mission's Wi-Fi allowance. The daily briefing began to buffer. Other missionaries began to fill the lounge over the next several minutes, some with their phones ready to take notes or sync with the Wi-Fi to watch the briefing themselves. "Let's get started," Waters began. He looked around the faces in the room. "Has anyone heard from Molly yet this morning?" he asked. Bo looked around himself. Given the size of the team, it was easy to see that Molly had not emerged yet. It did not seem so important to Bo that she be there. Molly was an exobiologist, and so long as they remained in space, she did not have much to do except review previous research. Given how little was known about the fauna on Polus IV, she had probably already read and reread everything available multiple times by this point in their voyage. Even so, it was apparent that her participation mattered to Waters. "I'll go find her," Bo said. He climbed down the ladder, past the airlock, through the deck with his quarters to the deck below where Molly's quarters were. He reached her door and could hear a muffled voice. He raised his hand to knock, but the door suddenly slid open and Molly stood before him. "Good morning, Bo," she said. She was congenial. She did not seem surprised to see him. Bo glanced into her room briefly and saw what he thought looked like a genuine paper book on her desk, but Molly took a step forward and forced Bo back into the hall, and the door quickly closed behind her. "All ready, Bo?" she asked. "It's time for the daily briefing. Do you have a real book?" he asked, motioning at the closed door. "Ha, oh that. I like to read and doodle sometimes. I don't have a whole lot to do, you know. It's also a classic way of documenting new wildlife. Drawing, I mean." Bo was a little perplexed, but equally curious. Regulations strictly controlled what they were permitted to bring aboard, both for concerns of weight allowance and for concerns of mission suitability. No materials that could compromise the integrity of their mission were permitted. "How did you get permission?" he asked. "I didn't. I found the book in one of the drawers in my quarters. I think the previous passenger must have left it there. The pencils I brought, though. I just had to give up some other stuff. It's all about weight. A pair of socks and an extra shirt is more than enough for some pencils and a few sheets of real paper." "But why not just use your phone or a mission tablet? Wouldn't that be easier?" Bo asked. Regulations strongly preferred that the missionaries carry out recreation on their phones. Electrons and data storage weighed nothing for starters. Well, not nothing, but it was negligible. It also permitted the mission director to perform appropriate monitoring of the team to ensure they remained capable so he could alert the administration of any unorthodox deviations. "Probably. I prefer the old way of doing it. And I'm not used to having a phone. Sketching is more fun anyway. There's something about paper and pencils that isn't the same on a phone. It feels more human, too. Shall we?" she said, redirecting his attention. Yep, everyone else should be ready to begin. Ready they were. The daily briefing had finished buffering, and as they climbed up the ladder into the observation lounge, Waters began to stream the day's lesson. The studio and the official Mundial Federated Air and Space Administration readers came into view. Bo recognized one as Declare White, a female staffer from the Mufasa's media division at headquarters where Bo worked back on Earth. "Good morning, missionaries. As always, the Earth is indebted to you for your commitment to the important work we do. I am Declare White." "And I am Nance Washington," said a man sitting beside her behind a news desk. "And this is your daily briefing," they said together. Bo cringed a little. They were called readers, and it was an apt term. Declare and Nance ably read the script, but that was the best that could be said of their delivery. Bo wondered why the administration would not simply hire paid entertainers for these positions. It certainly had enough money, and many would fall over themselves at the opportunity to advance their standing. Or the administration could simply give the information to the director for him to pass on. These briefings were always so wooden and uncomfortable they were almost comical. The staff apparently loved doing them, however. It was quite the honor to be selected as a reader, and he understood. The information they were presenting had been carefully crafted and edited, and it was essential that they read exactly what was in front of them. Today's news includes 3 new words that have been granted cautionary status on the official registry of offensive terminology, Declare continued. "Wow, 3 new words. That is quite incredible, Declare." "Yes, it is, Nance. As you know, the Department of Inclusivity and Diversity works to ensure that our society remains both inclusive and diverse, and part of that is ensuring that we all are aware of words that may offend those around us, especially our missionaries. That way we can speak carefully and appropriately at all times. That is an important job. I am so glad that we are able to communicate this important message to all of our missionaries," Nance responded. "I am too, Nance. That is why we present this briefing on a daily basis," Declare continued. "Today's words are surplice and amice." Bo had a notion those words were not pronounced that way, but it did not matter. "Be careful saying words like that, Declare." "I will, Nance. We're both excited to caution our missionaries with the 3rd word of the day, thurible." "Wow, just hearing a word like that sends chills up my spine." Bo was certain Nance was decidedly unchilled. "It makes me glad we are informing people about these offensive words." "Me too, Nance. More information, including a full list of cautionary words, and the administration's official style guide for speech may be found at—" Bo's attention wandered as Declare read out an entire internet address, letter by letter, slashes and dots included. "Let's not forget that the official registry includes references to Western religions in general by association, as well as curses, swearing, and any speech that could be construed as offensive or hostile by a listener, or someone who may become a listener. Our viewers can use this as a guideline if they ever have a question or have not had a chance to review the latest additions to the registry. And now it is time for the daily lesson." "Thank you, Nance. Our missionaries may be working with people of religious affiliation and may witness expressions of belief in God. So it's important they are prepared to be the recipients of offensive speech and use the coping strategies from their training to address the situation. Oh, be careful, Declare. I think that God is one of the cautionary words on the official registry." "You are right, Nance. But we have received special permission from the DID to use that and other words today in our briefing so that we can communicate this very important message." "I am glad we were given permission, because you had me worried for a moment there, Declare." "I was a little worried too, Nance." "Ha, ha, ha." They both laughed in unison, or rather, they read the sound of laughter in unison. "What other news do we have to present today, Declare?" "Today is an especially important day, Nance. This morning we received official confirmation that the Department of Human Services has successfully taken custody of several children from a collective of religious sectarians in New York State," Declare read. "The department was complying with a court order that the children be remanded into custody. This followed a court decision last year finding that the administration does indeed possess the authority to grant itself guardianship in circumstances that the Secretary of Human Services deems to be harmful or deleterious to children. Nance continued reading where de Clare left off. Following the court order, several of the parents from the opposition group agreed to send their children to administration schools where they will receive a proper approved course of education. However, several other parents issued a public statement stating that they would continue to educate their children themselves, triggering the Department of Human Services action. The children of the parents who refused to comply with the court order were taken into protective custody. This represents an important step in giving these children a proper education, Nance. It is also important that everyone respect the decisions of the court. This step by the Department of Human Services represents an important action to preserve the integrity of our secular society, de Clare read. It certainly does, de Clare. We applaud our fellow government agency for its good work, Nance read. Molly stood up suddenly. Every head in the lounge turned to face her. "Excuse me," she said. "I don't feel well. I think I shouldn't have skipped breakfast this morning." "Of course, Molly," Waters said. "Please take as long as you need." Molly hurried from the lounge and down the ladder. "This concludes our daily briefing," continued the broadcast. "Thank you. For the glory of the administration," Nance and de Clare said in unison. Waters paused the playback and minimized the screen, once more revealing the starfield through the observation window behind him. "You all know the nature of these presentations. I'm afraid the administration tends to oversimplify and generalize things to ensure that the message can be understood by the broadest possible audience. The administration mandates that its programming and documentation be written at no more than a 6th grade education level precisely for that reason," Bo chimed in. "As far as I know, that's correct," Waters confirmed. "I don't think we need to review the briefing any further. However, it is important that you all understand completely so that you can interact appropriately with the colonists once we arrive on Polus IV. For that reason, I will be asking each one of you to cover some of these concepts for us. I have asked Jazzy to get us started. Are you ready? Will you need to use the screen?" Jazzy nodded her head and stood up. "I only need a couple of slides for my presentation. Glory to the administration," she said, and began her presentation. Glory to the administration, Waters thought to himself. What are the implications? He stared out the observation window, lost in thought while Jazzy spoke, unaware that the entire mission team was watching him and awaiting his direction. "Director Waters," Jazzy said, "I'm finished." "Oh, thank you very much, Jazzy," Waters said, and brought himself back to the present. "For the remainder of the day, everyone should review their individual mission parameters and training in preparation for our arrival at Polus Station. The captain informs me that Polus itself should be visible as early as tomorrow."